Real quickly before we begin, I want to thank this video's sponsor, CarMarshal.com. CarMarshal.com can save you lots of money on buying used or new vehicles, cars, trucks, school buses. If you want to save money, I'll have a link in the description down below. I know I'm going to...
Medical marijuana and guns, with dispensaries popping up in Florida, how these rights conflict. In the state of Florida, you can legally own a gun, or semi-legally treat an illness using marijuana, but the harsh reality is that you can't do both. As of the writing of this article, there are already 21 dispensaries in the state of Florida, ready to fulfill medical marijuana orders. Approximately 50,000 Floridians have signed up to take advantage of this decriminalized medical treatment. There were originally some questions about how difficult it would be to implement the voter-created addition to the Florida Constitution, but now it appears as if lawmakers are finally on track. There are still roadblocks to those hoping to use marijuana legally. First, non-medical use is unquestioningly illegal in the state of Florida, and you can be arrested without a medical card. Second, marijuana is a controlled substance according to federal law, and illegal under the Controlled Substances Act 3. This means that even with a medical card, the federal government can come after marijuana users. There is wide support for legalization though. 29 states, and DC have legalized at least some sort of marijuana use. Alaska, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, and, as of the new year, California all allow full recreational use for, even though the President and the Justice Department have recently made statements that prosecutors would have more power to go after marijuana. This seems to only be against large-scale distribution. 5. Those using marijuana with a medical card have very little to worry about as far as federal law enforcement goes. This state of semi-legality has some people wondering, if it's technically still illegal, but without enforcement, how does that affect other rights? Federal law states that any user of illegal drugs cannot be in possession of a firearm. 6. The legal community is fairly certain the feds won't be going after marijuana users in decriminalized states such as Florida, but what about marijuana medical card holders who also own guns? At least one Florida firearms expert believes this may be an issue. Florida State Representative Cord Bird, R., from Jacksonville, warns that eventually, someone will get made an example of to dissuade other people from having both a medical marijuana card and a firearm. People need to be aware they could run afoul of federal law if they come across the wrong federal prosecutor at the wrong place at the wrong time. 7. There is no gun registry, so it's impossible for that hypothetical federal prosecutor to go hunting without probable cause. No matter the real-world risk, it is certainly not advised to be in possession of both. Federal law: medical marijuana, no firearm. The question that we have received from multiple people is a little bit different. Does a marijuana card interfere with my concealed weapon or firearm license, CWL? The direct answer is no. While federal law likely allows federal agents to force Florida to retract that license, just having one is not a violation of federal law. The issue is not with the license itself, but rather harkening back to the original violation. Seldom would a person own a CWL without also owning a firearm, a right that is out of bounds for a marijuana card holder. So far, this article has not discussed any situations where it is likely any federal prosecutor will come after you. Our law firm does not advise taking part in any illegal activity of any kind, but the truth is that federal prosecutors are not currently going after medical marijuana users. Card holders and users who own a firearm which never leaves the house are also unlikely to ever be prosecuted. If you wish to engage in any of this, do so at your own risk, but the risk is at least minimum compared to most crimes. The real danger for medical marijuana users who own firearms comes from fraud. In order to purchase a firearm, you must fill out an ATF Form 4473. This form includes asking if the firearm purchaser is addicted to, or a user of any controlled substances. This includes marijuana, and a medical card means it is implied you are a user. The holder of a card has two options: lie and face 4 years in prison for something that is easily verifiable by the ATF, or tell the truth and almost for sure be rejected. I would like to emphasize once again, our firm does not recommend taking part in any activity that is technically or clearly illegal, but of all the actions mentioned thus far in the article, this is the most dangerous. If you were to theoretically purchase from a private individual, this would not require a Form 4473, but is still illegal and inadvisable. Medical marijuana and gun. Ultimately, in the state of Florida, you can either own a gun, or treat an illness using marijuana. Unfortunately, both is not an advisable option due to federal law. If you have any questions about how state and federal law affect your rights, contact a qualified attorney who can help you. Our attorneys are experienced in Florida and federal gun and drug laws, and can answer questions on how best to approach these activities. If you have any issues and you're arrested or cited by law enforcement, then you need an attorney who will work hard to defend your rights in order to have the best possible outcome. Call our office anytime at 850-681-7777 to set a free consultation. 1 Florida Marijuana Dispensaries, potguide.com, last visited January 16, 2018. https://potguide.com/Florida/marijuana-dispensaries. 2 Skylar Swisher, medical marijuana industry expands with new South Florida dispensary. 321 USC 811, 2012. 4 Charlie Savage and Mark Healy, Trump administration takes step that could threaten marijuana legalization movement. New York Times, January 4, 2018, https://www.newyorktimes.com/2018/04/a/politics/marijuana-politics/politics/prosecutions.html. 5 ID 618 USC 922, 2012. https://www.law.cornell.edu/uscode/text/18/922. 7 David Goodhue, federal law prohibits medical marijuana users from owning guns. FL Keys News, January 4, 2018. http://www.flakesnews.com/news/local/article 1930395009.html.
Marijuana. You can't own a gun. That's what the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms says in a memo issued to gun dealers. But is this fair? Joining us now to debate this is former ATF director himself, Mike Sullivan, and Steve Fox. He's the director of government relations for the Medical Marijuana Policy Project. Nice to see both of you this morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good morning, Clayton.
Steve, let me start with you. Why do you have a problem with this?
Where to begin? I mean, we have a situation where the ATF is making this decision and forcing patients to make a terrible choice, which is to either use the medicine that they need to alleviate their pain legally under state law, or abandon their Second Amendment rights to bear arms and protect their families. This is a choice that no other patients are forced to make, and it's unfair that medical marijuana patients are being forced to make it.
Mike, what about that point that in other situations where medicine is administered to patients, they don't have to make this choice between owning a firearm and taking their medicine?
Well, that's not exactly true, but the point that Steve is making is that suggesting that ATF is putting them in that position is false. ATF is following the Gun Control Act, which indicates that anybody who's unlawfully using or addicted to any controlled substance is prohibited from purchasing a firearm. And the last time I looked, marijuana is still listed as a controlled substance by the two principal federal agencies, the FDA and DEA, and it's still a federal crime to essentially cultivate, possess, or distribute marijuana. So ATF is in compliance with the Gun Control Act, and they're responding to inquiries from gun dealers that they have a tremendous partnership and relationship with. Gun dealers want to know, what do they do when somebody presents a medical marijuana card?
Well, and Steve, Mike brings up a great point. You know, these gun dealers are put in an awkward situation because they're having to make these decisions sort of on a case-by-case basis. Here's what the ATF has written to the federal firearms licensees, and they say this: any person who uses or is addicted to medical marijuana or marijuana, regardless of whether or not his or her state has passed legislation authorizing marijuana use for medical purposes, is an unlawful user of or is addicted to a controlled substance and is prohibited by federal law from possessing firearms or ammunition. Steve, it seems sort of cut and dry.
Yeah, well, it really isn't, because the federal government has looked at this situation. You have the Department of Justice saying that U.S. attorneys aren't going to make a priority of going after individual users. You've had the Veterans Administration issue a policy that allows people to use medical marijuana and remain on their treatment regimen, and the ATF could have done the same thing. And the truth is, if the ATF is going in this direction, then your viewers should be in touch with the NRA if they're members, because the next thing they could do is just determine their definition of addiction and make it so that anyone using a prescription drug over an extended period of time can own a gun.
Mike, you shaking your head?
No, I think that's completely unfair and unreasonable. ATF can't, on their own, determine and interpret Congress's intent. Congress passed the Gun Control Act. If Steve has an issue with it, Steve should be lobbying Congress to essentially have exceptions as it relates to medical marijuana, to see whether or not there's an appetite within Congress to allow those people that are using marijuana with or without prescription cards to be able to purchase firearms. It's unfair to fault ATF to doing what Congress has asked them to do.
Steve?
Yeah, there's room for interpretation here. One court has looked at the definition of unlawful user and have said that it needs to be constant use or regular use over an extended period of time, and the mere possession of a medical marijuana card doesn't on its own say that you are a continual unlawful user, and more needs to be done by the ATF. They can't have this blanket policy.
Steve, what about law enforcement here in this situation? I mean, you know, we hear from law enforcement officials on a regular basis. I mean, you're impaired. Your judgment is impaired when you're using marijuana. You wouldn't want these individuals behind the wheel of a car. Why should they be handling a gun?
Well, you certainly wouldn't, but the truth is that all kinds of prescription medications impair judgment at times. Certainly the use of alcohol impairs judgment at times. But we can't just have this blanket policy. They have this policy for unlawful users, and it needs to be understood that the states have determined that in these states it is legal use of the drug. There may be inconsistency between state and federal law, but there is room for the ATF to understand this and determine that lawful use under state law should be considered lawful use.
Mike, you're shaking your head.
ATF does not have the discretion to do that. This is not a policy by ATF, and Steve knows that. This is a federal statute. It's called the Gun Control Act. When you look at the Gun Control Act, it has language in there about unlawful use of controlled substance. Steve's beef is not with ATF. ATF does an excellent job in terms of partnering with gun dealers to make sure that the Gun Control Act is properly enforced.
Steve, who's your beef with?
The Gun Control Act says unlawful users.
Yeah, no, my beef is, in this case, with the ATF. I mean, it is their interpretation, and I'm serious in the fact that the same statute says an unlawful user or someone addicted to any controlled substance. And if they want to make this interpretation, they can just as easily say that anyone who has an ongoing prescription to OxyContin or perhaps any other drug is addicted to that drug, whether it's Ritalin or Lunesta or who knows what it is, but they will be addicted to a drug, and the ATF will say, we're sorry, we're going to take away your guns. And the NRA should be aware of this and should be doing something about it.
That's the last words. Mike, we'll give you the last word.
I think Steve is trying to get the NRA to essentially embrace medical marijuana users' rights to firearms. If they want to change the law, they should change the Gun Control Act. It has nothing to do with interpretation or ATF policy. It's the language of the Gun Control Act. ATF essentially is trying to advise gun dealers in response to gun dealers' questions about marijuana users. Those people who are smoking marijuana, should they be able to purchase and possess a firearm?
All right, Mike Sullivan, Steve Fox, we appreciate a very interesting debate this morning. Thanks so much for joining us bright and early.
Thank you.
Hey, Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I just wanted you to know that I am using this stuff under fair use. And also remember to like and subscribe this channel. Also too, keep in mind I do not make any money on YouTube. This is 5 hours work a day, you know, fighting for freedom. And you can donate with PayPal and Patreon. I just want you to think about this. If everybody gives to PayPal and Patreon, Patreon is every month. Actually, PayPal you can do every month. I have 12,000 subscribers. If everybody gives, I can quit my regular job and go full-time investigations on Charlotte County and possibly even more and beyond. So just keep that in mind. If everybody helps out, I can go full-time doing this. Thanks.